The runway is louder than usual. Not crowded, just urgent. Engines idling longer than they should. Ground crews moving faster, but speaking less. And then you notice the pattern. These aren't commercial departures. No lines, no delays, just private jets, one after another, lifting off into the early hours. By mid-2026, aviation trackers and charter firms began reporting something unusual. A surge in last-minute private jet bookings out of Dubai, with some emergency one-way flights priced above $350,000 depending on distance and urgency. Not luxury travel, exit travel. And the people inside those cabins, not tourists, not business travelers, high-net-worth individuals, investors, residents who had once chosen Dubai as their safest bet. But now, they were leaving. Quietly, quickly. Some reports described clients requesting indefinite relocation. Others used stronger words. We're not coming back. And what makes this harder to understand is that nothing looks broken. The skyline still shines. The malls are open. The system appears intact. But behavior doesn't lie. Because when people with the most information, the most resources, and the most to lose start moving this fast, they're responding to something deeper, something not yet visible to everyone else. So the question isn't why Dubai still looks stable. It clearly does. The real question is, what are they seeing that others haven't noticed yet? For years, Dubai sold something very specific to the world. Not just opportunity, not just wealth, control. A place where instability didn't reach the same way it did elsewhere. Zero income tax, strategic location, a rapid infrastructure, and most importantly, predictability. After 2020, that promise became even stronger. While other global cities faced uncertainty, Dubai reopened faster, attracted capital faster, and grew faster. By 2025, global wealth migration reports estimated nearly 9,800 millionaires relocating to the UAE in a single year, bringing over $60 billion in new wealth. The number of high-net-worth individuals had doubled in just over a decade. Real estate surged, luxury markets expanded, private aviation demand increased. But for arrival, not departure. The narrative was clear. If you wanted safety, growth, and flexibility, Dubai was the answer. And for a time, it worked exactly as promised. The system reinforced itself. More wealth meant more development. More development meant more confidence. And confidence is what held everything together. But confidence is also the most fragile part of any system. Because once it begins to shift, everything built on top of it starts to move. The shift didn't begin with panic. It began with hesitation, subtle changes in behavior. In early 2026, wealth advisors began quietly recommending diversification, not away from Dubai entirely, but away from concentration. Clients started asking different questions, not about returns, but about exposure. At the same time, geopolitical tension in the region began to escalate. Nothing unprecedented, but enough to change perception. Airspace alerts, security advisories, temporary disruptions, individually manageable. But perception doesn't measure events individually, it measures patterns, and the pattern suggested uncertainty. Then came the bookings. Charter companies reported spikes in last-minute outbound flights, not scheduled weeks in advance, requested within hours. Routes to Europe, Asia, and secondary safe haven cities saw increased demand. Prices surged accordingly. Flights that typically cost $80,000 to $120,000 climbed beyond $300,000 during peak urgency windows, and still, they were booked, not by many, but by enough to notice. And in markets like this, you don't need mass movement to signal change. You need early movement, strategic movement, because those who move first are rarely guessing. The numbers begin to form a pattern. Private aviation firms tracking Gulf activity noted double-digit percentage increases in outbound charter requests during key weeks of mid-2026. Some operators reported demand spikes exceeding 40% compared to baseline months. At the same time, modern real estate data showed increased high-value property listings entering the market, not flooding, but rising. Listings above $10 million became more frequent. Rental inquiries shifted toward shorter terms. Wealth management reports indicated increased asset diversification into European and Asian markets. None of these figures point to collapse, but they point to something else: repositioning. And repositioning happens when risk perception changes, not when risk is confirmed, because by the time risk is obvious, it's too late to move efficiently. That's the difference. The people spending $350,000 on a flight aren't reacting to headlines. They're reacting to signals. Signals that suggest the environment, while still strong, may not remain as predictable as it once felt. To understand why this kind of movement matters, you have to understand how wealth operates at that level. It doesn't wait. It anticipates. High net worth individuals structure their lives around flexibility, multiple residences, diversified assets, mobility as a strategy. Dubai became attractive because it fit perfectly into that model. But that also means it's not permanent. It's part of a network. And networks adjust when conditions change. The city's system relies heavily on continuous inflow: capital, people, investment. Real estate drives visibility, tourism drives liquidity, financial services connect it all. But this creates a dependency. If inflow slows, or even feels uncertain, the system becomes more sensitive, not unstable, but reactive. And when reactions begin at the top level of wealth, they cascade downward, because the system isn't just physical, it's psychological. Built on belief. And belief, once questioned, doesn't disappear instantly. It weakens gradually, but enough to change behavior. The breakdown doesn't arrive as a dramatic event. It appears as acceleration, movements happening faster than expected, decisions made earlier than planned, private jets booking out within hours, property sales negotiated quickly, business operations adjusted temporarily. These are not signs of collapse. They are signs of recalibration. But recalibration at speed changes perception, and perception spreads. Investors notice patterns. Markets respond. Even those not directly involved begin to feel it, not through headlines but through behavior, through conversations, through subtle shifts in confidence. And once confidence slows, momentum slows with it. That's the critical point. Dubai's model depends on momentum. You need growth reinforcing growth. But momentum is sensitive. It doesn't need a crisis to change. It needs uncertainty. And uncertainty is enough to slow even the strongest systems. The human impact sits beneath these movements. For the ultra-wealthy, leaving is a logistical decision. For others, it's not that simple. Professionals, workers, families, many tied to the system in ways that don't allow instant movement, but they feel the effects: rising costs, changing job stability, shifts in demand across sectors. For those working in high-end services, client behavior changes first. Fewer long-term commitments, more short-term engagements. For real estate agents, more listings, more negotiations. For business owners, slower decision cycles. The system continues to function, but the experience within it changes. And change, even when gradual, creates tension. Not panic, but awareness. And awareness spreads. There are deeper layers driving this pattern. Cost of living is one. Between 2022 and 2026, housing, education, and operational costs increased significantly. Then there's geopolitical proximity. Dubai's strength, its location, also connects it to regional dynamics. Then there's global wealth strategy. High net worth individuals are no longer tied to one city. They distribute risk across multiple locations. Add to that climate pressure, rising temperatures, increasing energy demands. None of these factors alone explain the movement. But together, they create an environment where flexibility becomes more valuable than permanence. And when flexibility increases, loyalty decreases, not emotionally, structurally. Zoom out, and the pattern becomes global. Wealth is moving differently everywhere. From London to Singapore to New York, high net worth individuals are adopting multi-city lifestyles, reducing concentration, increasing mobility. Dubai is part of this network. But because its growth was so rapid, its shifts are more visible, more concentrated. What happens here reflects broader changes in how global wealth behaves under pressure, not abandoning cities, but rotating between them, adjusting constantly, which means no city remains the permanent center, only a temporary one. The realization is quiet. Dubai is not emptying, it is adjusting. But adjustment at this level reveals something deeper: that even the most controlled environments are still connected to forces beyond them, that no system is fully insulated, and that wealth, especially at the highest level, moves early. Not because collapse is certain, but because uncertainty exists, and uncertainty is enough. That's the part most people miss. It's not about what is happening, it's about what might happen, and decisions are being made based on that possibility. So now the question becomes unavoidable. If people are willing to spend over $350,000 just to leave quickly, what are they trying to get ahead of? And more importantly, How early is too early to notice? Because by the time the answer becomes clear to everyone, the movement may already be complete. If this made you think differently, even slightly, then there's more beneath the surface worth exploring. Share what you see, and stay with this conversation, because the biggest shifts don't announce themselves. They move quietly, until they're impossible to ignore. And now it comes down to something you can't easily ignore, not just what's happening, but what it could mean next. Because movements like this don't happen without reason, and they don't happen this quietly unless something deeper is shifting beneath the surface. So, what do you think? Is this just temporary repositioning, or the early signs of something much bigger? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know what you see that others might be missing. If this video made you pause, question, or look at things differently, then don't let it end here. Like the video so more people can see it. Share it with someone who thinks Dubai is untouchable. And if you want more deep, investigative stories that uncover what's really happening behind the headlines, make sure you subscribe and stay connected. Because the most important changes don't arrive with warnings. They unfold quietly, and we're only just starting to notice them.